Joining us now all the way from Germany, where he's watching his hockey-playing son, as opposed to the soccer-playing son. I was going to introduce him as soccer dad, Ray Ferraro of ESPN.
Still hockey there too. Yeah.
It's the week for soccer. How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing good. I am. I will say this: being over here, I'm able to watch the World Cup at decent hours.
Right,
that's true. Yeah,
as opposed to the craziness of getting up at 2 a.m. and stuff. So, man, it's been fun to watch. So all good. I got here. I got on the right train. I got to Cologne.
You got on the right train
without Gord.
That's amazing.
Come on now.
Congratulations.
I did. I got off the plane and I hear somebody calls my name, and I turn around and it's Brent and Connie Sutter, and
no way.
And I was like, "Well, what are you guys doing here?" And they were going to see their daughter. She lives in Austria, and so we talked a bit on the way. Then I got on the train, so I text Gord and I said, "Hey, it's weird. I saw Brent and Connie, in the airport." And he said, "Yeah, what's more weird is apparently you got on the right train." And I said, "Oh, aren't we a million laughs?"
Your reputation precedes you, yes.
Oh, and well-deserved, I will add.
Oh, absolutely. So are you like a lot of other people, Ray, where basically you had an ancestral side you rooted for Italy at the World Cup, and now you're adapting to this whole Canada's in the World Cup business?
Craziness, yes. In 1982, Italy won the World Cup. And I don't know why I would ever remember this, but whoever named Marco Tardelli scored for Italy. I don't even, from your youth, you have something burned in your brain.
Right.
And you're like, I don't know why, maybe I just like that name. But we were watching it up at a buddy's house, and their parents were like they'd been in the country like 7 minutes. And so it's a mix of English and Italian. And when the final whistle came, the wine came out. We were like 1982. I was 18, I guess. And there was cars driving around honking their horns, and it was really cool. So of course, Italy is who I would cheer for. However, they're not invited to this year's event.
That's right. It's an invitational.
They're available for analysts. There's a lot of really good soccer analysis right now from the Italians because they're all available. Yeah,
including on this show with Fanny Sartini. All right, well, enjoy the matches. Boy, I mean, I guess it's not home soil, but what an environment to watch the World Cup. A great soccer-playing nation in Germany. So go get yourself a stein of beer and enjoy.
Meanwhile, the action here got pretty good. Probably, I would say, the crowning achievement for the season for the Vancouver Canucks, Ray, as they take down the Stanley Cup champions on the road. Granted, there's some missing players for Colorado, but I don't think you make any apologies for that, given they were trailing in the third. They came back in the third. And what I liked about it, or what I found intriguing about this was, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, was the left for dead guys, the AHLers that have contributed here for this team. The Sheldon Dries of the world, the Kyle Burrows of the world, the Spencer Martins of the world, who all contributed in that game.
It's amazing how many players there are. And I learned this from watching the American League when Landon was in it, that there were so many players that are like, they're right there. They're either a half a step slow or an inch or two too short.
Or too injured. In Landon's case, too injured. Yeah.
Right. And it's something that just pulls them out of the mainstream, and then they get lost. But I'm telling you, there is 100 players in the American League that could be playing in the NHL, but for opportunity. And so for however this opportunity shows up for Martin and Burrows and Dries, it's like a gift for them, because they know they've been forgotten. And like, they get this chance, and some are able to get their hooks in it and build a little bit of, a little cred to their game. And then someone goes, oh yeah, these guys can play in the NHL, because when you're a call-up guy, you never get enough time to build a road, to say like that it's okay to have a bad game. You get a bad game, they go get somebody else.
Yeah.
They're moving guys in and out at the minimum salary. And so these guys have, they've really performed to a spot where you go, geez, you got to look at them, and they contribute, and you're like, well, then maybe you got to look at them again. And so it's, I got a soft spot for guys like that. I love it. I love to see the way that they've fought their way into a position to play and play some minutes.
By the time you were a veteran and in the room and considered an everydayer by a long shot, do you remember guys coming up from the minors that had these big nights, and like what was that like in the room? Because you're not besties with those guys; they've only been there for 8 days. What's it like when a guy has a 2-point game, or gives you a win? The backup goaltender goes on a bit of a tear. What's it like for those guys?
It's becomes really fun. It's like somebody that's an infrequent goal scorer that gets one. It becomes even more fun because it's kind of like a little zap to the system. So you see these guys, you either were one or know of your buddies that were these players fighting for position. So generally speaking, it's almost like it's a bigger deal when that happens, because part of you, I don't remember sitting there and understanding it really at the time, but you don't really expect anybody to stay. When people get called up and they have a good night, you're like, oh, good for him, and hope he has another one. But you don't really expect so, because it's not like they're 20-year-olds; they're
right.
Older guys. And I remember a couple of guys getting called up that were big scorers, 30 goal plus scorers in the American League, and they'd score, and you think, oh, that's really cool for them, and geez, I wonder if they can do it. And then 5 games later, they're back in the American League. But a lot of it, honestly, is opportunity.
Yeah.
Because somebody comes back. Like, just think when the guys that are injured come back, how that's going to cramp what the Canucks can do with their forwards. Like, how you can't have them all. You've got a cap number. If whenever Pearson comes back, you've got a problem. And so he's going to play, or he's going to be in the lineup, and somebody's going to lose their spot. And so when you're these call-up guys, not only you don't think of it at the time, but you're playing for everybody. You're playing for every team, because you're playing like you want to stay where you are. This is awesome. But you can't let yourself get too far thinking ahead. And the better you play, not only does this team notice, but that team notices. There's 30 other places maybe that go, oh, geez, you know what? We had an injury. All of a sudden, we need a left winger. And that guy goes on waivers. Boom. That's why guys get picked up.
One of the first names that comes to mind when we talk about this type of player, the other Ferraros.
Yeah, Chris and Peter. Fantastic players.
Prolific AHLers. Yeah.
Yeah, and just maybe a little small, was the knock on them. And they just could not quite get a foothold. And like Spencer Martin was a nice story last year. He had, what did he have, the 3-4 starts at the end of the year? And he did great. Well, now that opens the door for him. But if he has 4 bad starts at the start of this year, then, he doesn't have a lot of road underneath him. You start going, oh, maybe that was just a good couple of months or a good couple of weeks, whatever it was.
And they have Colin Delia too, so there really would have been another option for them had they.
Which is why they signed him, right? Yeah, I mean, like, how do you know? And now these players become interchangeable because of their salaries. They're all signed to about the same number because nobody's got any cap room to bring up a goalie making an extra $400,000. They can't do that. So now all of a sudden he's built a bit of a resume. So if he has a bad start, everybody's not going to lose their mind over it. They're like, yeah, well, you can't play great every night.
The good stories of Spencer Martin, Sheldon Dries, even as you mentioned, Kyle Burrows yesterday, the ex-Avalanche. But for me, the thing is, they've won 3 of 4 here, and they have to get hot soon if they're going to stay in this playoff chase. Ray going into Vegas and San Jose on a back-to-back on the weekend, and then Washington, Florida, Arizona, and Montreal on a homestand. Basically, the season is now, huh?
Oh, well, I guess I think as I've gotten older, I guess I look at it and I never quite see the immediacy that other people see this early in a season. I understand American Thanksgiving and points in or points out, but look, this start has at times looked like a tire fire, right? And now they've righted themselves a little bit. They're 3 points behind Edmonton, right? They're 5 points behind a couple of teams that are sitting that you would think had good starts, and the Canucks have not. They have been large portions of this year where they've left you wanting a lot more. So I don't think they got to win 5 out of 6 or something like that. They just cannot lose touch with the pack. But at the end of the day, the team is the team, and they were going to be, if they were going to be a playoff team, they were going to be in that last couple of teams fighting over the last one or two spots, right? I don't think anybody thought they were this 110-point machine.
No,
they were like, yeah, if they're in there, they're a bubble team, and they have to play themselves into the bubble spot, and then their record, and then what management's going to be able to do with Horvat, et cetera, will determine what the rest of the year goes. So I don't have that immediacy thought that you did for that matter. Mm-hmm. I don't think teams are running away and hiding this year. This really looks like it's parity. Like, do you look at the teams that are in the playoffs? Do you think Seattle's going to continue on this run?
Probably
not a chance. Not a chance. Our second year in Atlanta, we were in a playoff spot in January. We had which is hard to believe, we had 3 injuries, and we cratered. We just had you have no depth. You can't sustain anything. And so while the second year turned out much better, it was miles away from being good enough. And Seattle, I think they're 7-1-1 in November. They're scoring goals like crazy. And, Marty Jones has had an awesome run in goal, and here they are. They're second in the Pacific. But I look at them and I'm like, there's a reason the season's 82 games. That'll level off at some point.
It's amazing how it can crater. Remember Torts year, Matt? Torts year, the Canucks were in it and end of January.
Yep.
And it just, the bottom drops out.
Right. Ray, Vegas is the one team in the West that has run out. Of course, the next opponent for Vancouver, the 33 points, leads the conference, and by a margin, too.
Yeah.
6 points. Do you think Vegas has that kind of staying power?
I can't buy their goalie yet. And Logan Thompson's it's an amazing story. Speaking of being left on the side of the road, he was, whatever was next to that, that's where he was. And, now he's worked his way in. He had I'll call it an in, but he had built some trust with Kelly McCrimmon, who's the general manager there from his days in Manitoba. And so they were, they took a chance. They had him in the East Coast League. That, the decision with Fleury left him out in the cold. Leonard had all kinds of problems. And then he was injured and not quite right. And then he came back and he got injured again. And pretty soon they had no goalies. Laurent Brossoit got hurt. And this guy, I watched him last year. I'm like, I had a ESPN, an ABC game in the afternoon, Saturday afternoon game. And I'm like, I've never seen this guy play before. I had no idea. And he's had a great start. Their lineup looks really good. They're big. Here's the one thing, I know analytics tell us that undervalued players are often smaller players because they get overlooked with the eye test a lot of times. But if you look at good teams, they're really good teams, their defense, they're big. They can move, but they just clog up the middle of the ice. And Vegas has got a lot of people like that. They skate. Eichel's healthy. Stone is healthy. They put the misfit line back together for a stretch, and they're kind of in and out with Carlson, Smith, and Marchessault, and they just seem to hit everywhere. I just don't know if their goaltending is quite at the level of their team. Maybe they don't have to. Maybe he doesn't have to be. I don't know. Colorado won, and they just needed Darcy Kemper to be average last year. I'm still not going to walk by Colorado. They got about 7 guys out of their lineup, or 6 guys out of their lineup. I think those are the 2 heavyweights of the West, though.
Yeah. Elias Pettersson, he leads the Vancouver Canucks in scoring with 24 points, and he was using a matchup role against Nathan MacKinnon on Wednesday. He said, I told Bruce from the start of camp I want to be in a matchup role, and I have reminded him several times since. Is that the best course for the Canucks? Because they've used Horvat and Miller a lot in the past in the matchup role, but is EP40 the guy now to play the big minutes against the tough centerman?
In my mind, yes. I think he's better at it than both Miller and Horvat. But there is something I don't think anybody can deny. There is something different about Pettersson this year again. This looks like first-year Pettersson. I've used this example with you guys a lot. I first saw him. I don't know anything about him other than he's this skinny little Swedish guy, and the Swedish game, the European game. It's got to adjust to North America and all that stuff. And he just looked like a young Pavel Datsyuk to me. And they played Datsyuk and Zetterberg in those matchup roles all the time. They never feared the other team's best opponents because the way Zetterberg and Datsyuk played. And that, to me, should be what Pettersson is. I think he's had, I know Horvat's goals are off the chart. I mean, it's been so impressive what Horvat's done. I think Pettersson has been amazing. I just love watching him play again, where the last couple of years, it looks like he was injured, of course, but it just looked like he wasn't quite the same. But man, he is on it. I'm loving the way he's playing right now.
Was it Jeff? Somebody posted the overlapping stats from last year to this, and Pettersson's numbers over the last 65 games or something like that, just through the roof. You just, once whatever clicked, Ray, whatever, if it was health, if it was a motivational thing. But Elias Pettersson is back to being the player that we thought of. And you said he's like the rookie kid. Offensively, he's like the rookie kid, but he seems wiser though too, doesn't he? He looks like he's got the 4 or 5 years of experience now.
Yes, and whether he looks it or not, he's miles stronger.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, like I was reading an article this morning about Tage Thompson, and so the Blues. It's hard to believe the Blues had him in the first round, right? And they traded him in that big deal for Ryan O'Reilly. And so he's a 6'7" kid, and he's stumbling around, and he's gangly, and he's 24 now. Some guys they like Craig Berube said, he was just immature. He meant physically. Yeah. He's just immature, and you got to grow. You got to get stronger. There is no substitute for it. Like all of a sudden somebody leans on you and you don't fall over. And it's because you're stronger. Like you're doing all the same things in the gym, but you're just stronger. You got to think of it each year. A player starts the year in a form that's as strong as he's going to be for the rest of the year. His strength goes down through the year with the number of games and travel and worn down and all that stuff. Then the next year when he goes back in the gym, he's starting from a higher floor because he's a year older and he put the summer before of work in. And then each year your floor is a little higher till you get to the tipping point, and then you're just holding on, right? You're treading water. Pettersson's got still lots of growth physically in front of him. And I think it's really plain to see how much stronger, and with his determination, he stays on the play longer. And the other thing is, I think I just notice it when I'm at the games. Like he and Mikheyev and Kuzmenko, they like playing together. Like you can tell they like it. And that's when a line clicks and they like it, it's probably a pretty good recipe for success.
Lastly, Ray, and with all due respect to yourself and Joe Sakic and Scott Niedermayer and those who developed here in this province, potentially the best ever British Columbia hockey prospect is at the LEC tonight in Connor Bedard. What do you know of the young man? What have you seen of his game? What's your forecast for what this kid can do?
Well, it's been enough games and enough locations and with enough eyes on him that the package of ability, vision, thought of the game has impressed everybody that's ever seen him. The first time I saw him in a summer skate, I want to say he was 14, and he was skating, and Landon was out there, and he's like, "Dad, you got to come see this kid skate." So I schlepped myself over there. It's the middle of July, right? I really want to be watching a hockey skate in the middle of July, and all these guys are getting in shape. And at 14, he was just this little guy, right? And you're like, oh, look at him. He's got the puck half the time. He's playing against guys that are pro hockey players, some in Europe, some in the NHL. They're all just starting to do their skating thing. And he just leapt off the page at you. Now, his shot, I mean, this is not a scouting report because everybody has commented on it. His delivery of the puck, the variations of his delivery, make it tough for the goalies, really hard for the goalies to pick up. The velocity that he shoots it at, he's talked a lot about watching guys shoot the puck and trying to emulate their style of play or their release points and stuff. Now, Joe Sakic had the best wrist shot I've ever seen, like of anybody. There's nobody better. And don't forget, like Joe was, we were using a little bit different technology back in the day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so Joe was one of the first guys to go to the two-piece. And for him, it was like cheating. Like it was ridiculous how he shot the puck. So when you mention those guys, of course, Niedermayer and Sakic are at this other class of player. It's a long way to a number of goals that Joe Sakic scored, but there is zero chance, even as good as players are in this draft class, there's zero chance somebody has more upside potential than Connor Bedard. I ran into a scout the other day, and they had watched Adam Fantelli, and they're like, man, that kid is good, but he's not Bedard. He's big, he's bigger. That's going to be as we get close to the draft, that'll be the one back and forth is, he's bigger, he's stronger, but whoever's got the first pick, in my mind, there's zero chance they walked by Bedard. It's almost like was it my draft year? No, it was the 1983 draft year. There was a lot of debate because Mario Lemieux had a crappy Memorial Cup. He had 282 points that year, by the way. 282.
But he had a bad Memorial Cup.
He had a bad Memorial Cup. And so there were these stories popping up, like maybe the Penguins should draft Kirk Muller. He's going to be a really good player, really solid. Could you imagine?
Oh, my God.
Like if it would have been, I guess it would have been like Portland Trailblazers all those years looking at Sam Bowie and Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. So you're not walking by Bedard. I mean, he's a fantastic kid. He's got, and the fact that buildings are selling out to see him is so cool. Yep. Is so cool. What a tremendous talent.
We feel fortunate to be there tonight. Ray, enjoy the hockey in Germany, the soccer on television, and the time with Landon. We'll catch up next week.
Awesome. You bet, guys. We're just on the way to the game now, so haven't seen him play live in 4 years, so I'm really looking forward to it.